Out in rural Georgia, where fields stretch wide and mornings start with silence, a racist gang came for what they thought was an easy target. A quiet, aging black farmer named Marcus Owens. Alone, they assumed. Soft. Breakable. They didn't see the war behind his eyes or the discipline in his every step. They didn't know the fields he now plowed once ran red with blood. One call to his old Navy SEAL team changed everything. By nightfall, the ambush collapsed, the gang scattered, and the reckoning Marcus delivered was only getting started. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Dawn hadn't yet touched the Georgia sky when Marcus Owens's eyes opened. Years of military discipline meant his body still knew exactly when to wake. 4:30 a.m., without fail. He lay still for a moment, listening to the peaceful silence of his farmhouse, feeling the cool morning air drift through the partially open window. His bedroom was sparse but comfortable. A heavy oak dresser stood against one wall, and his bed faced the window overlooking his fields. The only decoration was a single framed photo of his old SEAL team, gathering dust on the nightstand. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed, his joints protesting slightly. At 52, his body reminded him daily of the toll his service had taken. Still, he moved with purpose, pulling on worn jeans and a faded blue work shirt. His morning routine was as precise as a military operation. It brought him peace. In the kitchen, he put coffee on to brew while he laced up his steel-toed boots. The rich aroma filled the room as he stood at the sink, gazing out over his 20 acres. The pre-dawn darkness was starting to soften, revealing rows of corn and soybeans stretching toward the tree line. His small herd of cattle would be waiting in the east pasture. Another day, he murmured, pouring the coffee into his favorite ceramic mug, a gift from Tyrese years ago. The familiar weight in his hand grounded him. Marcus stepped onto his front porch, inhaling deeply. The morning air was heavy with dew and the sweet smell of fresh-cut hay from his neighbor's field. His farm was his sanctuary now, so different from the chaos of his former life. Here, he found purpose in working the land, in watching things grow instead of destroying them. He made his way to the barn, gravel crunching under his boots. The chickens were already stirring, pecking at the ground as he approached their coop. He scattered feed, counting heads out of habit. 15 hens, 1 rooster. All present and accounted for. Something caught his eye as he turned toward the cattle pasture. Unfamiliar tire tracks in the soft earth near his fence line. Marcus crouched down, studying the deep treads. These weren't from his truck or his regular delivery vehicles. The tracks were fresh, probably from last night, and they showed a vehicle that had stopped, turned around, and left in a hurry. His combat instincts, never fully dormant, sparked to life. Marcus walked the perimeter of his property, checking for other signs of disturbance. He found more tracks near his back gate, along with scattered cigarette butts that weren't his brand. Someone had been watching his farm. The rest of his morning chores were performed with heightened awareness. He fed and counted his cattle. 12 head, all healthy. But his mind kept returning to those tracks. Years of training told him this wasn't random. Someone had been scoping out his property. As the sun climbed higher, Marcus worked his fields, checking irrigation lines and testing soil moisture. The physical labor helped calm his nerves, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. By late afternoon, his shirt was soaked with sweat as he finished repairing a section of fence. The sun was setting when he finally headed back to the house, his shadow stretching long across the yard. Inside, he washed up and started preparing a simple dinner: fresh vegetables from his garden and a piece of chicken. The routine was familiar, but his movements were tense now, his senses alert. The first unusual sound came just as he was plating his food. Engines, multiple vehicles, approaching fast down his private road. Marcus switched off the kitchen light and moved to the window. His heart rate picked up, but his hands were steady as he pushed the curtain aside. Headlights cut through the growing darkness, illuminating his yard in harsh white beams. 3 pickup trucks were rolling toward his house, their engines growling aggressively. Behind them, he could see more vehicles approaching. Marcus's tactical mind kicked in automatically, assessing threats and options. The trucks were spreading out, surrounding his property in a practiced manner. This wasn't random violence. This was coordinated. In the glare of headlights, he could see men jumping from the vehicles, carrying weapons. The orange glow of torches bobbed in the darkness. His hands clenched as he watched them approach, at least a dozen armed men moving with purpose across his land. The same land he'd bought after retiring, hoping to find peace. The same soil he'd worked every day for the past 5 years, trying to grow something good to make up for all the death in his past. Now they were here to destroy it all. Through the window, Marcus could see their faces clearly now, masks of hatred illuminated by torchlight as they spread out around his house and barn. They carried rifles and shotguns, some brandishing burning torches, like something out of a nightmare from another century. Marcus moved silently through his darkened house, years of SEAL training taking over. His movements were fluid, purposeful, each step carefully placed to avoid creaking floorboards. He needed to reach the barn, and fast. The sound of breaking glass shattered the night. A bottle crashed through his kitchen window, flames erupting as the Molotov cocktail spread burning gasoline across his floor. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air. Marcus slipped out the back door, staying low in the shadows. The attackers were spreading out, their torches casting dancing shadows across his property. Their voices carried clearly through the night air. "Burn it all down!" someone shouted. "Show him what happens when he doesn't know his place." The words made his jaw clench, but Marcus remained focused. 20 yards to the barn. He could make it. The darkness was his ally. He'd spent years mastering the art of moving unseen. He reached the barn's side door just as the first shots rang out. They were firing into his house now, glass breaking and wood splintering under the assault. Marcus slipped inside the barn, moving directly to a false panel in the wall. Behind it lay a waterproof case containing his M4 carbine, magazines, and body armor. Insurance he'd hoped never to need. The barn doors crashed open. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness as 2 men entered, their boots crunching on hay. Marcus could smell gasoline. They were planning to torch the barn, too. "Check the loft," one ordered. "Make sure he ain't hiding up there." Marcus moved like a shadow, silent and deadly. His hands found familiar positions on his rifle as he melted deeper into the darkness. The attackers were sloppy, untrained. They'd separated themselves from their group, made themselves vulnerable. A horrific sound split the night, the death scream of one of his cows. They were slaughtering his livestock now. Rage burned in Marcus's chest, but he kept it controlled, channeled. Emotion got you killed. The first attacker never saw him coming. Marcus struck from behind, one hand clamping over the man's mouth while his other arm locked around the throat. The struggle was brief, ending with a sharp crack as Marcus twisted, severing the spinal cord with practiced efficiency. The second man turned at the sound, raising his shotgun. Marcus was already moving. He slammed into the attacker's midsection, driving him back against the barn wall. The shotgun blast went wide, deafening in the enclosed space. Marcus struck twice, throat and temple, dropping his opponent like a stone. Outside, more vehicles had arrived. Marcus counted at least 15 attackers now, their faces hidden behind masks as they destroyed everything in sight. His chest tightened as he watched them spray paint his barn with racial slurs, their hatred raw, and ugly in the torchlight. A burst of automatic fire ripped through the night, but not aimed at him. Marcus recognized that sound. Tyrese's M249 saw. His old friend had arrived. "Contact front!" someone screamed. The attackers scattered as Tyrese's heavy weapon forced them to cover. Marcus used the chaos to his advantage, moving to a firing position at the barn's window. Two attackers ran past his position, trying to flank Tyrese. Marcus dropped them both with precise double taps. The training never left you. Aim, squeeze, confirm. Pain exploded in his left shoulder as a round found him. Marcus rolled away from the window, blood soaking his shirt. The wound was bad, but not immediately fatal. He'd survived worse. "Marcus!" Tyrese's voice boomed across the property. "Give me some cover fire!" "Moving to your position!" Marcus forced himself up, ignoring the burning in his shoulder. He laid down suppressing fire, forcing the remaining attackers to duck behind their vehicles. Tyrese sprinted through the gap, his powerful frame moving with surprising agility for a man his age. "Damn, brother," Tyrese said as he reached Marcus's position. "You sure know how to throw a party." His eyes narrowed as he saw Marcus's wound. "You're hit." "I've had worse paper cuts," Marcus grunted, though the pain was intensifying. "They're pulling back." Indeed, the attackers were retreating now, engines roaring to life as they fled into the night. Tyrese kept his weapon trained on their escape route until the last vehicle disappeared. The aftermath of violence lay scattered across Marcus's farm. His house burned, livestock lay slaughtered in the fields, and hateful messages defaced his buildings. The peace he'd built here lay in ruins. "How'd you know?" Marcus asked, letting Tyrese examine his wound. "Been watching these bastards," Tyrese replied, his voice tight with anger. "Knew they were planning something. Didn't know it would be this big, though." He helped Marcus to his feet. "This ain't over, brother." "Not by a long shot." Marcus looked out over his burning property. The land he'd worked so hard to nurture now scarred by hatred. The peaceful farmer in him mourned the destruction, but another part, the warrior he'd tried to leave behind, was awakening. These men had brought war to his doorstep. The sun crept over the horizon, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of angry red. Marcus sat on the remains of his front porch steps, his shoulder freshly bandaged by Tyrese's skilled hands. The morning light revealed the full extent of the devastation. Blackened buildings, dead livestock scattered across blood-stained fields, and hateful messages carved into his land. 20 years of work, Marcus said quietly, his voice rough from smoke inhalation. "Everything I built here?" Tyrese stood beside him, his rifle still close at hand. "We'll rebuild it, brother. Every damn bit of it." Marcus touched his bandaged shoulder, wincing. The pain helped keep him focused, kept the rage from overwhelming him. 4 dead attackers lay covered with tarps near the barn, waiting for law enforcement. 2 more had escaped with injuries. The rest had fled like cowards into the night. "Sheriff's department should have been here hours ago," Tyrese said, checking his watch. "I called it in right after the shooting stopped." "They'll come when they want to come," Marcus replied. He'd lived here long enough to know how things worked. But even he was surprised when Sheriff Curtis Dade's patrol car finally rolled up around 7 a.m., taking his sweet time inspecting the property before approaching. The sheriff was a tall man with graying hair and an easy smile that never quite reached his eyes. He walked with the confident swagger of someone used to having his authority unquestioned. 2 deputies flanked him, looking uncomfortable. "Morning, Marcus," Dade said pleasantly, as if he wasn't standing in the middle of a war zone. "Heard you had some trouble last night." Marcus stood slowly, ignoring the pain. "That's one way to put it, Sheriff. My property's destroyed, my livestock slaughtered, and I've got 4 dead men who tried to kill me." Dade glanced at the covered bodies, then at the bullet holes and burn marks. His expression remained carefully neutral, Looks like quite a mess. Though I have to ask, you sure this wasn't just some dispute that got out of hand? Maybe over property lines or grazing rights? Tyrese stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. Are you serious? Look around. Look at what they wrote on the ground. The sheriff held up a placating hand. Now, Mr. Jackson, I understand you're upset, but let's not jump to conclusions. Could have been drunk kids causing trouble, making it look worse than it was. Marcus pointed to his destroyed house. Drunk kids with military-grade weapons? With organized tactics? Who knew exactly where to hit me? He kept his voice level through sheer force of will. This was a coordinated attack, Sheriff. They came to kill me. That's a mighty serious accusation, Dade said, writing nothing in his notepad. Did you recognize any of them? Get any names? They wore masks, Marcus replied, but I can describe their vehicles, give you shell casings, tire tracks. The sheriff closed his notepad. Tell you what, I'll file a report for trespassing and vandalism. Maybe we can track down some of these troublemakers. Have a talk with them about respecting private property? Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Trespassing? They tried to lynch me. They murdered my livestock. They burned racial slurs into my land. Now, Marcus, Dade's tone turned patronizing. Let's not make this about race. That'll just stir up trouble nobody wants. File an insurance claim for the damage, and we'll keep an eye out for suspicious activity. Tyrese took an angry step forward, but Marcus caught his arm. He recognized the look in Dade's eyes. The sheriff had already decided what version of events he'd accept. Pushing harder would only make things worse. Thank you for your time, Sheriff, Marcus said quietly. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Dade tipped his hat. Sorry about your property, Marcus. Times like these might be worth considering selling. Lots of buyers interested in good farmland. With that parting shot, he and his deputies returned to their vehicles and drove away. Marcus waited until they were gone before sitting heavily on the steps again. His shoulder throbbed in time with his pulse. That racist piece of... Tyrese started. Save it, Marcus cut him off. We both knew how this would go. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun climb higher. The smoke had mostly cleared, but the stench of burned buildings and dead animals hung heavy in the air. Marcus thought about the years he'd spent building this place, trying to create something peaceful after decades of war. Now violence had found him again, and the law wouldn't help. What's the play? Tyrese asked finally. He knew that look in his friend's eyes. Marcus stood carefully. Decision made. Get me my phone. Tyrese retrieved Marcus's cell phone from his truck, one of the few things that hadn't been destroyed. Marcus scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he needed. He hadn't called it in years, but some connections never broke. He pressed dial and waited. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Sarah Adams. Marcus took a deep breath. I need you here. Now. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Marcus's ravaged farmland as a black SUV rolled up his gravel driveway. Dust billowed behind the vehicle as it came to a stop. Marcus and Tyrese watched from the porch, their faces grim but expectant. Sarah Adams stepped out first, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing tactical pants and a dark shirt. Bobby Tran emerged from the passenger side, carrying a large metal case, his face tight with concern. Ezekiel Brooks unfolded his tall frame from the back seat, scanning the property with practiced eyes. My God, Marcus, Sarah said, taking in the burnt barn and slaughtered livestock. Her usual commanding presence softened with genuine pain for her old friend. Marcus nodded slowly, his jaw clenched. Appreciate you coming so quick. Bobby set down his case and moved to embrace Marcus, careful of his bandaged wounds. Brother, you should have called sooner. Didn't want to drag you all back into this life. Marcus replied quietly. Ezekiel placed a steady hand on Marcus's shoulder. We're family. This is what family does. They gathered in Marcus's living room, which had become a makeshift command center. Bobby unpacked his equipment with practiced efficiency. Laptops, surveillance gear, and communication devices spread across the dining table. Sarah stood at the window, her tactical mind already assessing sight lines and defensive positions. "Tell us everything," Sarah commanded, her voice carrying the same authority it had during their SEAL operations. Marcus and Tyrese recounted the attack in detail. Bobby's fingers flew across keyboard keys, pulling up local police reports and social media activity. Ezekiel made notes in a small notebook, his tracking expertise already at work. "Sons of Purity," Bobby said, turning one laptop around. "They've been growing bolder in the last 6 months. Their leader is this piece of work, Wyatt Cole." The screen showed a man in his 40s with close cropped hair and cold eyes. Several photos showed him at white supremacist rallies, always at the center of the crowd. "I know that face," Tyrese growled. "He was here last night, staying back while his boys did the dirty work." Sarah leaned over Bobby's shoulder, studying the intelligence. "They've got a pattern. Small farms, minority owners, escalating violence. But this attack on you, Marcus, it's different. More coordinated." Bobby connected additional monitors, creating a web of information. Surveillance camera feeds from nearby roads began populating the screens. Ezekiel studied tire tracks in photographs taken that morning, comparing them to vehicle registrations. "Got something," Bobby announced after an hour of intense work. Cole's group operates out of an old warehouse off Route 16. Used to be a farm supply store. He pulled up satellite imagery. They're careful, but not careful enough. Their communications are encrypted, but his fingers danced across the keys. "Amateur hour. I'm in." Sarah studied the warehouse layout. 3 entry points. Loading dock on the east side. Main entrance facing north. Emergency exit on the west wall. Her mind was already forming tactical approaches. Ezekiel returned from scouting the perimeter of Marcus's property. Found fresh tracks matching the ones from last night. They've been watching, probably for weeks. He spread out a local map. "They're using these back roads here and here." Explains how they approached without being noticed. Marcus stood at the table, his presence drawing everyone's attention. The others saw the change in him, the farmer replaced by the warrior they'd known for decades. "We need confirmation on Cole's location." Bobby nodded, typing rapidly. "Already on it. I've tapped into their cell networks. Cole's phone is pinging off towers near the warehouse. He's there right now." "Running it like a command center," Sarah observed, studying the surveillance feeds. "At least 20 members coming and going. Heavy weapons. They're not just some backwoods hate group." "No," Marcus agreed. "This feels more organized, professional." Bobby's system beeped, and new information flooded the screens. "Got video confirmation. Cole just arrived at the warehouse 10 minutes ago." Live footage showed the gang leader's truck pulling into the loading dock. The team gathered around the monitors, watching intently as Bobby cycled through different camera angles. The warehouse bustled with activity. Men moving crates, vehicles being prepped, weapons clearly visible. "They're planning something bigger," Tyrese said, his voice tight with anger. "This wasn't just a one-off attack." Sarah straightened up, her decision made. "We need eyes on that warehouse. Close surveillance, full coverage." She looked at each team member in turn. "We do this right. We do this clean. We find out exactly what we're dealing with before we move." Marcus nodded, trust in his old team evident in his expression. These were the people he'd gone to war with, the ones who'd never failed him. Now they were here, standing in his kitchen, ready to fight another battle. Bobby continued monitoring the feeds, setting up automated alerts. Ezekiel prepared his tracking gear, ready to establish observation posts. Sarah began sketching out preliminary tactical plans, while Tyrese checked their weapons. The afternoon light was fading, casting the room in shadows broken by the glow of monitoring screens. The warehouse location was confirmed. Cole's presence was verified. The first phase of their operation was set. Night wrapped around the warehouse like a shroud. Marcus and his team moved through the darkness with practiced silence, their night vision goggles revealing the terrain in ghostly green clarity. Sarah had positioned them strategically. Marcus and Tyrese would breach the loading dock, while she and Bobby approached the main entrance. Ezekiel provided overwatch from a nearby rooftop, his rifle trained on potential escape routes. 3 guards, north side. Ezekiel's whisper crackled through their earpieces. 2 more by the loading dock. Regular patrol every 12 minutes. Marcus checked his watch. They had 7 minutes until the next patrol. He and Tyrese pressed against the cold metal of a shipping container, waiting. The warehouse loomed before them, its windows casting dim yellow light into the night. Bobby's voice came through. "Security cameras looped. They're blind." Sarah's command was crisp. "Execute in 3, 2, 1. Marcus moved first, swift and silent. The guard never saw him coming. One precise strike to the throat, another to the temple. The man crumpled without a sound. Tyrese handled the second guard with equal efficiency. At the main entrance, Sarah and Bobby neutralized their targets with synchronized takedowns. 4 guards down, no alerts raised. "Loading dock clear," Marcus whispered. "Moving to Phase 2. They breached the side door using Bobby's electronic bypass. The warehouse interior spread before them, stacks of crates, weapon racks, and a makeshift office elevated on a metal platform. Marcus spotted Cole through the office windows, hunched over paperwork. 6 tangos on the floor, Ezekiel reported from his position. 2 by the weapons cache, 3 near the vehicles, 1 walking the catwalk. Sarah's voice was steady. "Take them." The team moved like shadows. Marcus tracked the catwalk guard, timing his approach. When the man turned, Marcus struck, a quick chokehold, easing the unconscious body down silently. Below, his team worked with lethal precision. Sarah took down 2 men by the weapons with rapid hand strikes. Bobby and Tyrese moved in perfect sync, neutralizing the others before they could raise an alarm. Cole remained oblivious in his office, music playing through his headphones. Marcus approached from behind while Sarah covered the door. Through the glass, they could see Cole bobbing his head to whatever he was listening to, completely unaware. Marcus kicked the door in. Cole spun, reaching for a pistol on his desk. Marcus was faster. His hand clamped around Cole's throat, slamming him against the wall. The gun clattered to the floor. "Hello, Wyatt," Marcus growled. "Remember me?" Cole's eyes widened with recognition and fear. "How did you—" Marcus tightened his grip. "You burned my farm, killed my animals, left some choice words on my land." His voice was deadly calm. "But something doesn't add up." Sarah entered, weapon trained on Cole. Bobby and Tyrese secured the rest of the warehouse, zip-tying unconscious guards. "This was too organized," Marcus continued. "Too well-funded. Who paid you?" Cole struggled, his face reddening. "I don't know what—" Marcus slammed him again, harder. "Wrong answer." Okay, Cole gasped. "We got paid. Good money. More than we've ever seen." "Who?" Sarah demanded. Cole's eyes darted between them. "Some ex-military guy. Said he had a personal score to settle with Owens. Wanted it to look like our usual jobs. Racial stuff? But this was different." Marcus felt a chill. "Name?" "Briggs," Cole wheezed. Called himself Commander Briggs. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. He released Cole, stepping back. Sarah's weapon didn't waver. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "Briggs is dead. Columbia. 8 years ago." Cole shook his head, rubbing his throat. Not dead. Met him face to face. Older guy. Military bearing. Scary calm, you know. Had pictures of you. Knew everything about your routine. Said you owed him a debt in blood. Marcus exchanged looks with Sarah. They both remembered Columbia. Operation Ghost Blade. The mission that went wrong. The civilian casualties they'd never fully explained. He's lying, Tyrese said from the doorway. No, I swear. Cole's voice cracked with genuine terror. Briggs is alive. He's been planning this for years. Said you took everything from him, so he was going to take everything from you. Started with the farm, but that was just the beginning. Bobby appeared with a laptop. He's telling the truth. Found encrypted communications. They match old Navy protocols, ones Briggs would have known. Marcus stared at Cole, his mind racing. Alan Briggs, his former commander, his mentor, the man who'd taught him everything about being a SEAL, the man whose death he'd carried as another weight of guilt. Where is he now? Marcus demanded. Cole shook his head frantically. Don't know. He contacts us. Different burner phones, different drops. Never stays in one place. But he's out there, man. And he's not going to stop until you're dead. Sarah moved closer to Marcus, her voice low. If Briggs is alive, then everything we thought we knew about Columbia was wrong, Marcus finished. The implications were staggering. A commander they'd trusted, presumed dead, now orchestrating attacks from the shadows. Cole slumped in his chair, defeated. He said you'd figure it out eventually. Said when you did, to tell you something. He swallowed hard. Said to tell you, remember the children of Ghostblade. Dawn crept over Marcus's farmhouse, casting long shadows through the burned fields. Inside, the team huddled around Bobby's array of laptops and monitors, their faces lit by the blue glow of screens. Empty coffee cups littered the table, evidence of their sleepless night analyzing the intel from Cole's warehouse. Look at this, Bobby said, fingers flying over the keyboard. Security footage appeared, showing a figure in a dark coat meeting with Cole. The image was grainy, but the military bearing was unmistakable. Facial recognition's a 67% match to Briggs's last known photos. Marcus leaned closer, studying the familiar stance, the way the man held himself. His stomach tightened. That's him. Sarah pointed to another screen displaying financial records. Wire transfers through shell companies, all leading back to offshore accounts. He's been moving serious money, not just to Cole's group, but to similar organizations across 3 states. Building a network, Tyrese added, spreading out a map marked with red pins. Each pin represents an attack on minority-owned farms in the last 6 months. All following the same pattern as yours, Marcus. Ezekiel, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. He's been testing tactics, perfecting his approach. Your farm wasn't the first. It was the culmination. Marcus stood, pacing the worn floorboards. The weight of revelation pressed down on him. I need to tell you about Operation Ghostblade, he said finally. The full story. The part that never made it into any report. The team grew still. They'd all heard rumors about that mission, but Marcus had never spoken about it. 8 years ago, Colombian drug cartel, deep in the jungle, Marcus began, his voice heavy. High-value target named Santiago Rivera. Briggs was commanding officer. I was lead sniper. He paused, the memories sharp as broken glass. We'd tracked Rivera for weeks. Finally got intel he was meeting buyers at a remote compound. Sarah nodded. I remember the briefing. Clean shot. Minimal collateral risk. That's what we thought. Marcus stopped pacing, facing his team. I had the shot lined up. Rivera in the scope. But something was wrong. Civilian movement patterns we hadn't anticipated. I radioed Briggs, recommended we abort. But he gave the green light anyway, Tyrese said softly. Marcus nodded. Direct order. Take the shot. So I did. His hands clenched. The intel was bad. Rivera had moved his entire family to that compound. His wife, his children, and others. The shot triggered a secondary explosion. The whole building. Bobby pulled up classified photos on his screen. The destroyed compound. The bodies. The aftermath. 17 civilians, Marcus continued, including Rivera's family, and he took a deep breath, including Briggs's wife and daughter. They'd been hostages. Rivera had taken them months before, but the intel never reached us. Briggs knew they were missing, but never imagined they'd be there. Silence filled the room. The horror of understanding dawned on each face. Briggs disappeared after the mission review, Sarah said. They found blood, evidence of a firefight. Everyone assumed that he'd been killed by Rivera's men, Marcus finished. But he wasn't. He's been planning. All these years, building his revenge. Using hate groups as his weapons, turning my race against me. Making it look like simple bigotry while he pulled the strings. Ezekiel stood suddenly. Incoming transmission. Breaking through our firewalls. The main screen flickered. A face appeared. Older, weathered, but unmistakably Alan Briggs. His eyes were cold, his smile cruel. "Hello, Marcus," Briggs said. "I see you finally figured it out. Took you long enough." Marcus stepped forward. "Alan." "Don't!" Briggs's voice cut like steel. "Don't pretend you feel anything but fear right now. You should. You took my family from me, made me watch through your scope as they died. Now I'm going to take everything from you. Slowly, piece by piece." The camera panned, showing photos pinned to a wall. Marcus's farm, his friends, the team. Surveillance shots taken over months. "Your farm was just the beginning," Briggs continued. "I'm going to destroy everything you've built, everyone you care about. And you're going to watch, just like I did. Helpless, unable to stop it." Sarah stepped up beside Marcus. "You're insane, Alan. This won't bring them back." Briggs laughed, a hollow sound. "This isn't about bringing them back, Sarah. This is about justice, about making him feel what I felt. The children of Ghostblade demand it." "The children of Ghostblade were innocent," Marcus said. "This is just murder." "No, Marcus. This is war. And I learned from the best, you, the team. All those lessons about precision strikes, about using the enemy's weaknesses. I've just chosen different weapons. Instead of bullets, I use hatred. Instead of bombs, I use fear." The screen showed more photos, other farms, other victims of the hate group attacks. Every person I've hurt, every life I've destroyed. Their blood is on your hands, and I'm just getting started. Bobby's fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to trace the signal. Briggs smiled, noticing. "Don't bother, Bobby. You taught me too well about covering tracks. When I'm ready, you'll find me. Until then," his eyes locked onto Marcus. "Watch your back. Watch your friends. Because you never know which moment will be their last." The screen went black, leaving the team in stunned silence. Marcus's hands gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white with tension. The morning sun now streamed fully through the windows, but the warmth couldn't chase away the chill of Briggs's threats. Sarah immediately took charge. "We need to secure the perimeter. Now." She pulled out a tablet, drawing up a quick tactical map. "Bobby, set up motion sensors every 50 yards. Ezekiel, get the drone coverage expanded. We're blind out there." Marcus nodded, his military training kicking in. "I've got weapons cached in the Barnes Foundation. Tyrese, help me." He turned, but Tyrese was already gearing up, checking his pistol. "I'll do a sweep of town," Tyrese said, sliding spare magazines into his vest. Something about those photos Briggs showed. Some were recent. He's got eyes on us, which means he's got people nearby. Not alone, Marcus said sharply. We stick together. Tyrese shook his head. Town's got too many corners, too many witnesses. One man draws less attention. I'll keep radio contact every 15 minutes. He checked his watch. Mark time now. Sarah stepped forward. He's right, Marcus. We need intel, and Tyrese knows how to stay invisible. She handed Tyrese an encrypted radio. First sign of trouble, you call. No heroics. Marcus didn't like it, but he knew they were right. He clasped Tyrese's shoulder. 15 minutes, 1 second late, and we come in hot. Copy that. Tyrese grinned, but his eyes were serious. Keep the coffee hot. They watched from the porch as Tyrese's truck disappeared down the dirt road. Bobby was already setting up the perimeter sensors, while Ezekiel launched a small surveillance drone from the back field. Marcus and Sarah worked methodically, retrieving weapons and ammunition from his hidden cache. They transformed the farmhouse into a defensive position, covering angles, establishing fields of fire. It was familiar work, bringing back memories of countless missions. The first radio check came right on schedule. Town looks quiet, Tyrese reported. Checking the sheriff's office next. Something feels off about... Static cut through his words. Say again, Marcus called. You're breaking up. Multiple vehicles, unmarked. More static. Think I've been made... Sarah was already moving. Track his signal! Bobby's fingers flew across his laptop. Got him! 3 blocks from the sheriff's office. The sound of gunfire crackled through the radio, followed by the screech of tires. Contact! Tyrese's voice was tight. 4 shooters, maybe more. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Marcus was running to his truck, Sarah right behind him. They peeled out onto the road, gravel spraying. Bobby's voice came through their earpieces. Taking heavy fire. He's moving south on Parker Street. Multiple pursuers. More gunfire echoed through the town, both through their radios and in the distance. They were still 2 minutes out. Lost his signal, Bobby reported. Last known position behind the old hardware store. Marcus pushed the truck faster, taking corners with practiced precision. They reached the hardware store in a screech of brakes. The street was empty, but fresh rubber marks scarred the asphalt. Shell casings glinted in the morning sun. Split up, Sarah commanded. Clear the area. Watch for civilians. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking corners, doorways, any possible hiding spot. The back alley told the story. Scattered brass, scuff marks in the dirt, signs of a fierce hand-to-hand struggle. A dumpster bore fresh bullet holes. Marcus found Tyrese's radio, crushed and bloody, near a loading dock. Dark stains marked the concrete, still wet. Tire tracks led away, deep impressions suggesting a heavy vehicle. Marcus! Sarah called from around the corner. She stood by a white van, its side door open. Inside, tactical gear lay scattered. Professional grade, military issue. These aren't local thugs. These are operators. Marcus examined the gear. No markings, but the setup is familiar. Private military contractors. Briggs is hiring professionals now. They heard sirens in the distance. Sarah grabbed his arm. We need to move. Sheriff's department will be here soon, and they're not on our side. Back in the truck, Marcus gripped the steering wheel so hard it creaked. The image of Tyrese's bloody radio burned in his mind. His oldest friend, the man who'd saved his life countless times, now in Briggs's hands. We'll find him, Sarah said firmly, reading his thoughts. Briggs wants an audience. He'll contact us. Marcus nodded slowly. But what will be left of Tyrese when he does? They drove back to the farm in heavy silence. The morning sun now feeling like a spotlight, exposing their failure. Bobby and Ezekiel met them at the door, faces grim as they reported their findings. The attackers had used signal jammers, professional tactics, coordinated teams. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a precisely planned operation. Marcus placed Tyrese's broken radio on the table. The blood on it now dried dark. His voice was steel when he spoke. Briggs wanted us to know he could reach us anywhere. Fine. Message received. He looked at his team. Now, we show him what happens when he takes one of our own. The farmhouse hummed with tense activity as screens flickered in the darkened room. Bobby hunched over multiple laptops, his fingers dancing across keyboards while lines of code reflected in his glasses. Ezekiel operated the surveillance drones, methodically scanning every warehouse and industrial zone within 50 miles. Sarah coordinated with her old intelligence contacts, calling in favors accumulated over decades of service. Marcus paced, his boots wearing a path in the wooden floor. Every few minutes, he'd stop to study the growing web of information on the wall. Satellite images, property records, power consumption data. His jaw clenched tighter with each passing hour. "Got something?" Bobby called out, breaking the pre-dawn silence. "Heavy data traffic from an industrial complex outside town. Way more bandwidth than they should need." Sarah leaned over his shoulder. "Could be streaming video. Or could be nothing," Marcus said, but moved closer to examine the data. "We can't afford another wild—" The screens suddenly went black. When they flickered back to life, Alan Briggs's face filled them all. "Hello, Marcus." Briggs smiled, looking exactly as Marcus remembered him, except for his eyes. Those were different now. Colder. "I thought you might want to see how your friend is doing." The camera panned to show Tyrese strapped to a chair, bloody but conscious. His face was swollen, one eye completely shut, but his good eye glared defiantly at the camera. Marcus's hands curled into fists. "Tyrese, tell him you're okay," Briggs ordered, moving into frame beside Tyrese. "Don't you dare give these bastards anything, Marcus," Tyrese spat, earning a brutal backhand from Briggs. "Bobby," Marcus whispered urgently, "tell me you're tracking this." "Working on it," Bobby muttered, his fingers flying. Signals bouncing through multiple servers. Briggs produced a knife, testing its edge. "You know, Marcus, I spent years planning this. Learning everything about you. Your routines, your weaknesses." He pressed the blade against Tyrese's throat. "Your friends." Sarah touched Marcus's arm, steadying him. They all knew Briggs was trying to provoke a reaction, to make Marcus lose focus. "Commander," Marcus said evenly, using Briggs's old title. "This is between you and me. Let him go, and I'll meet you anywhere." "Oh, but this is between you and me." Briggs dragged the knife down Tyrese's arm, drawing blood. "You took my family. Now you get to watch while I take yours. One piece at a time." Tyrese didn't scream, but his face contorted in pain. Marcus felt each cut like it was slicing his own flesh. "Got a trace," Bobby announced. "Signals coming from the old Phillips manufacturing complex. 10 miles north." "What else can you tell me?" Marcus demanded, forcing himself to look away from the screens. Sarah spread out a satellite map. 3 buildings, all connected. Heavy security setup. Motion sensors, cameras. At least 24 heat signatures moving inside. "More mercenaries," Ezekiel added, marking guard positions from his drone feed. Professional pattern to their movements. "They're expecting us." On screen, Briggs continued his methodical work, explaining each cut to Marcus in detail. Tyrese had stopped talking, conserving his strength, but his eyes never lost their defiant glare. "You've got 1 hour, Marcus," Briggs finally announced. Then we moved to power tools. The screen went dark. Marcus stood absolutely still for several heartbeats, his breathing controlled and measured. When he spoke, his voice was ice. Bobby, what's our best entry point? Loading dock on the east side, Bobby replied, pulling up thermal images. Blind spot in their camera coverage. But Marcus, this is exactly what he wants. He's waiting for us. I know. Marcus moved to his weapon case, selecting his gear with practiced efficiency. But he made two mistakes. First, he thought watching Tyrese's torture would break me. He checked his rifle's action. Instead, it just reminded me who I am, what I'm capable of. Sarah recognized the cold precision in his movements. This was Marcus the warrior, the man who'd earned his reputation in 100 classified missions. And the second mistake? Marcus slammed a magazine home. He forgot who taught me everything I know about combat. He faced his team, his eyes hard as granite. Briggs trained me, shaped me into a weapon. Now that weapon's coming for him. He laid out his tactical vest, methodically checking each piece of equipment. This isn't just about rescue anymore. Briggs wanted to make it personal. He looked at each of his teammates in turn. He succeeded. This is war. The team moved with renewed purpose, preparing for battle. Sarah coordinated their approach vectors while Bobby hacked the facility's security systems. Ezekiel prepped their vehicles, ensuring multiple escape routes. Marcus finished his preparations, donning his combat gear like a second skin. Each piece felt familiar, awakening muscle memories from countless missions. But this time was different. This wasn't about following orders or serving country. This was about saving family. He checked his watch. 43 minutes until Briggs's deadline. Just enough time to arrive and unleash hell. Gear up, he ordered. We move in 5. Midnight cast long shadows across the Phillips manufacturing complex. Marcus led his team through the blind spot Bobby had identified, their movements silent and precise. Security cameras swiveled uselessly above them, locked in an endless loop thanks to Bobby's hacking. The loading dock door yielded to Sarah's electronic bypass. They entered in diamond formation. Marcus on point, Sarah and Bobby covering the flanks, Ezekiel watching their 6. Their night vision gear painted the world in ghostly green. Marcus held up his fist, stopping the team. 2 mercenaries passed through the intersection ahead, their weapons held professionally. He waited until they were past before signaling the team forward. 3 tangos, North Corridor, Sarah whispered through their comms. Marcus responded with hand signals, split and flank. The team divided smoothly, years of training making them one fluid unit. Marcus and Sarah went left, while Bobby and Ezekiel went right. The mercenaries never saw them coming. Marcus struck first, his knife finding the base of the first man's skull. Sarah took the second with a chokehold, easing him silently to the ground. Bobby and Ezekiel emerged from the shadows to catch the third between them. No shots fired, no alarms raised. They moved deeper into the complex, following Bobby's mapped route to where the video signal originated. Each intersection brought new threats. Each threat was eliminated with cold efficiency. A burst of gunfire shattered the silence. Someone had spotted them. "Contact front!" Marcus shouted, diving behind a concrete pillar as bullets chipped away at the wall behind him. Sarah's rifle barked 3 times. 2 mercenaries dropped. "Move!" They pushed forward aggressively now, speed becoming more important than stealth. Bobby's suppressing fire kept the enemy pinned, while Ezekiel flanked through a side office. More mercenaries poured in from adjoining corridors. Marcus's rifle spoke in controlled bursts. Bodies fell. Shell casings bounced off concrete floors. The smell of cordite filled the air. 2 minutes to target room, Bobby called out between reloads. A grenade bounced around the corner. "Down!" Marcus yelled. The explosion rattled windows and showered them with debris. Through the smoke, Marcus saw the heavy steel door where they were holding Tyrese. 2 mercenaries guarded it with belt-fed machine guns. "Cover me!" Marcus sprinted forward as his team laid down suppressing fire. The guards turned their weapons toward him, but too late. His first shot took the left guard in the throat. His second and third put the right guard down permanently. Sarah reached the door first, placing breaching charges while the others maintained security. "Ready! Breach!" Marcus ordered. The door blew inward. Marcus was through before the smoke cleared, his rifle scanning for threats. The room was empty except for Tyrese, still strapped to the chair, head slumped forward. "Tyrese!" Marcus rushed to his friend, checking for a pulse. It was there, weak but steady. "Took your sweet time," Tyrese mumbled through swollen lips. "Complain later," Marcus said, cutting the restraints. "Can you walk?" "Hell no," Tyrese grinned bloodily. "You get to carry my heavy ass." Marcus hoisted Tyrese over his shoulders in a fireman's carry. "Team, we're mobile. Let's go." They started their extraction, moving more slowly now with their wounded teammate. Sarah took point while Bobby and Ezekiel covered their flanks. "Multiple contacts converging," Bobby warned, checking his tablet. "They're trying to box us in." An explosion rocked the building. Then another. The floor trembled beneath them. "They're collapsing the structure!" Sarah shouted. "Move!" Marcus staggered as another blast went off nearby, nearly losing his grip on Tyrese. Concrete dust filled the air. Support beams groaned ominously above them. They ran, no longer trying to be tactical. Gunfire pursued them through the corridors. Bobby paused to return fire, taking a bullet in his vest, but dropping 3 pursuers. "Exit 30 meters ahead," Sarah called out. The final explosion caught them just as they reached the door. The blast wave threw Marcus forward. He tucked and rolled, protecting Tyrese as best he could as they hit the ground outside. Sarah and Ezekiel dragged them both to their feet. Bobby provided covering fire as they sprinted for their vehicles. Engines roared to life. Tires squealed on asphalt. They peeled away from the collapsing building as gunfire sparked off their armored panels. "Anyone following?" Marcus asked, cradling Tyrese's head in the back seat. "Negative," Ezekiel reported from behind the wheel. "Clean getaway." The drive back to the farmhouse passed in tense silence, broken only by Tyrese's labored breathing. Marcus kept pressure on his friend's worst wounds, silently willing him to hold on. Dawn was breaking when they finally pulled up to the farmhouse. Sarah had medical supplies ready. They carried Tyrese inside and began treating his injuries, cleaning wounds, stitching cuts, setting broken fingers. "You look like hell," Marcus told his friend once they'd finished. "Should see." "The other guys?" Tyrese managed a weak smile. Marcus squeezed his shoulder gently. "Rest. You're safe now." He stepped outside onto his porch, watching the sunrise with his team. They were exhausted, covered in blood and concrete dust, but alive. They'd gotten Tyrese back. For this moment, at least, it felt like victory. Dawn painted the farmhouse kitchen in soft orange light as Marcus carefully cleaned the last of Tyrese's wounds. His friend winced as antiseptic touched raw flesh, but remained stoic. The rest of the team moved purposefully around them, Sarah organizing medical supplies, while Bobby and Ezekiel monitored their surveillance equipment. "Those stitches are going to leave some nasty scars," Marcus said, taping down a fresh bandage. "Just more stories to tell," Tyrese replied weakly. "Besides, chicks dig scars." Sarah approached with fresh coffee and pain medication. "Here, these should help take the edge off." "The good stuff?" Tyrese managed a slight grin before swallowing the pills. Bobby looked up from his laptop. "Briggs's operation is in chaos. That raid hit them hard. We took out at least 15 of his best men, and the complex is completely destroyed." "Local news is already covering the explosion," Ezekiel added, checking his phone. "Police can't ignore this one." Marcus finished with the bandages and stood, stretching his tired muscles. "We need to press our advantage. Briggs will be A high-pitched beeping cut through the morning quiet. Bobby's head snapped toward his equipment. His eyes went wide. Energy spike! Massive electrical surge coming from... The world exploded. The blast hit like a giant's hammer, shattering windows and throwing everyone to the floor. Heat and pressure rolled through the house in a deafening wave. Marcus's ears rang as he scrambled to his feet. "Everyone out! Now!" He grabbed Tyrese, hauling his injured friend up as more explosions rocked the foundation. Sarah appeared through the smoke, helping support Tyrese's other side. They stumbled toward the door as ceiling beams cracked ominously above. Bobby and Ezekiel were already outside, waving frantically. "The barn!" Bobby shouted. "More charges!" The barn detonated in a massive fireball, sending burning debris raining across the fields. The shockwave knocked them all down again. Marcus covered Tyrese with his body as flaming wood and metal showered around them. Secondary explosions rippled through the property. The greenhouse disintegrated. The equipment shed blew apart. Even the distant storage silos erupted in flames. Years of careful farming literally going up in smoke. "The vehicles!" Sarah yelled. "We need to!" Their trucks exploded simultaneously, turning the driveway into an inferno. Briggs had thought of everything. Marcus watched in horror as fire consumed his crops. The wheat fields burned like a golden sea, smoke billowing black against the morning sky. The fruit trees he'd planted 5 years ago crackled and split in the intense heat. Everything he'd built since leaving the service, everything he'd created to find peace, all of it burning. "Move! Get to the tree line!" he shouted over the roar of the flames. They half carried Tyrese away from the destruction, finally reaching the relative safety of the woods that bordered the property. For nearly an hour, they could only watch. The fire department eventually arrived, but there was little they could do except contain the spread. Marcus's farm burned until there was nothing left to burn. When the flames finally died down, they emerged from the trees. The devastation was total. Where Marcus's house had stood for generations, only scorched foundation remained. The fertile fields were now ash and cracked earth. Even the old oak tree by the drive, the one his grandfather had planted, was a blackened skeleton reaching toward the sky. Marcus walked through the ruins in a daze, boots crunching on debris. Here and there, twisted metal or broken glass crunched under his feet. A charred photo frame caught his eye. The picture of his parents on their wedding day, now curled and burned beyond recognition. "Marcus!" Bobby's voice was tight with anger. "You need to see this." He held up his tablet. A new video message was playing. Briggs's face filled the screen, older and harder than Marcus remembered, but still wearing that same cold smile. "I told you I'd take everything from you, just like you took everything from me," Briggs said. "But I'm not finished. Meet me at our old training ground. You remember the place. Come alone, or I start targeting your team's families next. Time to end this where it began." The message ended. Marcus stared at the blank screen, feeling something shift inside him. The shock and grief crystallized into pure, focused rage. Sarah touched his arm. "Marcus, we need a plan. We can't—" "No." His voice was quiet but hard as steel. "No more plans. No more tactics. He wants me. He gets me. You can't face him alone," Tyrese protested from where he sat propped against a tree. "That's exactly what he wants." Marcus looked around at his team, his family. Then he looked back at the smoking ruin of his home. Everything he'd built to escape violence had been destroyed by violence. The peaceful life he'd tried to create was now ash and ember. He could feel the warrior he'd tried to leave behind stirring to life again. The patient farmer was gone. What remained was the weapon the Navy had forged him into. "He thinks he's broken me," Marcus said, his voice carrying the promise of retribution. "He thinks this makes us even." He picked up his rifle from where they'd stashed their weapons in the woods. The familiar weight felt right in his hands again. The team regrouped at Bobby's hunting cabin, a modest two-room structure tucked away in dense Georgia woods. Marcus sat at a worn kitchen table cleaning his rifle with mechanical precision, while the others tended to Tyrese's wounds on a makeshift cot. The cabin's single bulb cast long shadows across rough wooden walls. "Your bandages need changing," Sarah said to Tyrese, her voice carrying forced calm. She worked methodically, trying to hide her concern at his wincing. "These cuts are deep, but they'll heal clean if we keep them covered." Bobby paced near the cabin's single window, his laptop balanced on one arm. "I've got satellite imagery of the training ground. It's been abandoned for years, but there's recent vehicle activity. Briggs has definitely been setting up shop there." 3 access roads, Ezekiel added from where he studied maps spread across the floor. "All easily monitored. He'll see us coming no matter which way we approach." Marcus continued cleaning his rifle, each movement precise and familiar. The smell of gun oil filled the small space, mixing with antiseptic and wood smoke from the small stove. "Not us," Marcus said quietly, not looking up. "Just me." The cabin went silent, except for the soft crackle of the stove. Sarah's hands stilled on Tyrese's bandages. "Like hell," Tyrese growled, trying to sit up straighter. "You're not facing that psychopath alone. He said, 'Come alone, or he targets your families next.'" Marcus finally looked up, his eyes hard. "You know he means it. You saw what he did to my farm." "We can set up overwatch positions," Bobby argued. "Stay hidden but close enough to—" "No." Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. "This started between me and Briggs. It ends the same way." Sarah slammed down the medical supplies she was holding. "This is exactly what he wants. He's isolated you, destroyed your home, and now he's trying to separate you from your team. It's tactically stupid and you know it." Marcus set down his cleaning cloth and faced them fully. "You're right. It's what he wants. But sometimes you have to spring the trap to end the game." He looked at each of them in turn. "I need you to trust me, like you did in Colombia, like you did in Afghanistan." The mention of their shared combat history hung heavy in the air. They'd all followed Marcus's judgment in impossible situations before. He'd earned that trust with blood and success. Ezekiel spoke up, his usual quiet voice carrying weight. "What's your real plan, Marcus? You're not walking in there just to die." "No." Marcus stood and began methodically checking his gear. "I'm walking in there to end this, but I need you all to do something harder than fighting. I need you to wait." "For what?" Bobby asked. "For whatever comes next." Marcus shouldered his pack. "If I don't make it back, you hunt him down. If I do—" He managed a grim smile. "Well, we'll need help rebuilding the farm." Tyrese struggled to his feet, ignoring Sarah's protests. He limped over to Marcus and grabbed his shoulder. "Brother, don't do this. Not alone." Marcus pulled his oldest friend into a careful hug, mindful of his injuries. "Some debts can only be paid one-on-one. You taught me that, remember?" Tyrese's jaw clenched, but he nodded slowly. They all remembered the night in Kandahar when Tyrese had gone alone to face the warlord who'd killed his sister. They'd trusted him then. Now he had to return that trust. Sarah approached next, her anger replaced with fierce concern. "You've got 3 hours before full dark. After that, we're coming in. Families be damned." Marcus nodded. It was more time than he needed. The team watched from the cabin's porch as Marcus's figure disappeared into the lengthening shadows. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Marcus drove an old truck they'd borrowed from one of Bobby's contacts, taking back roads to avoid attention. The familiar Georgia landscape rolled past, but his mind was already at the training ground, remembering its layout, planning approaches. The abandoned military facility appeared exactly as he remembered. A sprawling complex of concrete buildings, rusted equipment, and overgrown training courses. The main gate hung open, its chain cut. Marcus parked outside and continued on foot, moving silent as a ghost through deepening twilight. The facility had been their advanced training ground 20 years ago. Every building, every corner, every sight line was etched in his memory. He could almost hear the echoes of younger men running drills, Briggs's voice barking orders, the crack of gunfire on the range. Now it was a tomb of military ghosts, perfect for their final confrontation. As darkness claimed the sky, Marcus moved deeper into the complex. His boots made no sound on broken pavement. Wind whispered through empty doorways, but beneath the natural sounds, he caught the faint hum of generators, the glint of fresh boot prints in old dust, the subtle signs of recent activity masked by someone who knew how to hide them. Briggs was here. Marcus could feel his presence like a storm about to break. He paused in the shadow of the main administration building, letting his senses extend into the gathering night. 2 decades of combat experience told him he was being watched. Somewhere in the darkness, his former commander was waiting. The game was beginning. Marcus moved through the shadowy training compound like a ghost, his rifle at the ready. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting strange patterns across debris-strewn floors. Every step brought back memories, young SEALs running drills, Briggs's commanding voice echoing off concrete walls, the pride of earning their tridents. The air felt thick with dust and tension. Marcus's boots crunched softly on scattered glass as he cleared each room with practiced precision. The building's layout was exactly as he remembered, but now everything was stripped bare, leaving only skeletal remains of their former training ground. A faint metallic click made Marcus freeze. His enhanced hearing, honed by decades of combat, picked up the subtle sound of movement above. He melted into the shadows of a doorway, controlling his breathing, becoming one with the darkness. "Welcome home, Marcus." Briggs's voice boomed through the empty halls, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "I knew you'd come alone. Always the honorable one, weren't you?" Marcus didn't respond. He tracked the voice's origin, noting how it echoed differently from various speakers hidden throughout the building. Classic misdirection. But Marcus hadn't survived this long by falling for basic tricks. "Nothing to say to your old commander?" Briggs taunted. "The man who made you what you are?" A shadow moved on the catwalk above. Marcus fired 2 precise shots, splintering metal where Briggs had been a split second before. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Briggs's laugh echoed again. "Still quick on the trigger. Just like in Colombia." Marcus advanced carefully, using the building's support columns for cover. "You want to talk about Colombia? Let's talk face to face." "Oh, we will." Briggs's voice dripped with venom. "We'll talk about how you gave the order to fire without confirming the target. About how my wife and daughter died because of your arrogance." Something clattered across the floor. A flashbang. Marcus turned away just as it detonated, but the blast still left his ears ringing. Through the disorientation, he sensed movement behind him. Marcus spun, barely deflecting Briggs's knife thrust. The blade sliced air where his throat had been. They crashed together in a brutal exchange of strikes, each man calling upon years of close combat training. Briggs was still powerful despite his age, his technique precise and lethal. He drove Marcus back with a combination of strikes, his face twisted in rage. "You took everything from me!" Marcus absorbed a punch to his ribs, countering with an elbow strike that caught Briggs's temple. "We were hunting terrorists. Your family wasn't supposed to be there." "They were visiting my brother," Briggs roared. landing a devastating kick to Marcus's knee. If you'd waited 5 minutes for confirmation, you'd have known that. They separated, circling each other in the dim light. Blood trickled from a cut above Marcus's eye. Briggs favored his right side where Marcus's elbow had found its mark. "I've lived with that guilt for 20 years, Marcus said, his voice raw. "But you're using it to justify murder, using hate groups to destroy innocent lives. You've become everything we fought against." Briggs charged again, his attack fueled by pure hatred. They exchanged a furious series of blows, neither man giving ground. The sound of their combat echoed through the empty building, flesh striking flesh, grunts of pain, bodies slamming against walls. "Innocent?" Briggs spat blood. "Like my daughter was innocent. She was 12, Marcus." 12! He landed a devastating combination that sent Marcus staggering. "I had to identify their bodies. What was left of them?" Marcus recovered, blocking Briggs's follow-up attack and countering with a sweep that took the older man's legs out. They both went down hard, grappling on the debris-covered floor. Each man sought submission holds, trying to end the fight. "I see their faces every night," Marcus grunted, fighting for position. "But this won't bring them back. You're just creating more victims." Briggs headbutted Marcus, stunning him momentarily. "Good! Now you know how it feels to lose everything." He wrapped his hands around Marcus's throat, squeezing with murderous strength. "To watch your world burn." Marcus's vision began to darken. He could feel Briggs's fingers crushing his windpipe. With desperate strength, he bucked and rolled, breaking the grip. Both men scrambled to their feet, gasping for air. "You're right about one thing," Marcus wheezed, settling into a fighting stance. "I did make a mistake in Colombia, but I won't make another one tonight." Briggs charged with a roar, abandoning technique for pure aggressive fury. Marcus sidestepped, using his opponent's momentum against him. In one fluid motion, he trapped Briggs's arm and executed a perfect throw, driving him into the concrete floor with crushing force. The impact knocked the wind from Briggs's lungs. Before he could recover, Marcus had him pinned, one arm locked behind his back in an unbreakable hold. Briggs struggled, but the position was secure. Marcus could have ended it there. One sharp twist would break Briggs's neck. Instead, he maintained the hold, forcing his former commander to face the cold floor. "Do it!" Briggs growled. "Finish what you started." Marcus increased pressure on the hold, causing Briggs to grunt in pain. "No, you don't get to die a warrior's death. You're going to face justice, real justice, for everything you've done." Marcus kept Briggs pinned, his knee pressing firmly into the older man's back. With his free hand, he pulled out his phone and activated the video recording. "Now you're going to tell the truth. All of it." Marcus increased pressure on the hold, making Briggs wince. "Start with how you survived Colombia." Briggs struggled against the restraint, but Marcus's grip was unshakable. "You can't prove anything." "Wrong answer." Marcus twisted slightly, causing Briggs to gasp in pain. "The world's going to know exactly what you've become. Start talking." Briggs's laugh was bitter, echoing off the concrete walls. "You want the truth? Fine. I survived the explosion in Colombia. Woke up in a village 3 days later. When I learned what happened to my family," his voice cracked with rage, "I decided to die that day. Commander Alan Briggs ceased to exist." "And then?" Marcus prompted, keeping the camera steady. "Spent years planning, building networks, finding people who could help me destroy you completely." Briggs's words dripped with venom. The Sons of Purity were just useful idiots, easy to manipulate with their own hatred. I fed them targets, gave them weapons, pointed them at your farm. "Keep going," Marcus commanded. "Tell them about Sheriff Dade." "Curtis?" Briggs laughed darkly. "Easiest one to buy." already corrupt to the bone. Money in the right accounts, and suddenly hate crimes disappeared from police reports. Evidence vanished. Witnesses changed their stories. The sound of footsteps echoed through the building. Marcus tensed, but didn't release his hold. Sarah emerged from the shadows, her weapon trained on Briggs. Behind her, Bobby and Z secured the perimeter with practiced efficiency. "Couldn't stay away, could you?" Marcus said, managing a slight smile despite his exhaustion. "You really think we'd let you face him alone?" Sarah moved closer, her expression hard as she looked down at Briggs. "We've got the building surrounded. Federal agents are on their way." Briggs renewed his struggles. "You think this changes anything?" "You can't undo what happened." "No," Marcus agreed. "But we can stop you from hurting anyone else." He addressed Sarah without taking his eyes off Briggs. "Bobby's evidence?" "Already sent to every major news outlet and federal agency," Sarah confirmed. "Sheriff Dade was arrested 10 minutes ago. His deputies are cooperating, turning over everything." Red and blue lights began flashing through the broken windows. The sound of vehicles and voices grew outside as law enforcement arrived. Bobby appeared with 2 federal agents, their badges gleaming in the dim light. "Commander Alan Briggs," one agent announced formally. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, terrorism, attempted murder, and multiple federal hate crime violations." Marcus maintained his hold while the agents approached with handcuffs. "This is justice, Alan, not revenge. That's the difference between us." As the agents secured Briggs, Marcus finally released his grip and stood slowly, his body aching from the fight. Sarah steadied him with a supportive hand. "The press is outside," Bobby reported, joining them. "Whole circus is waiting. Got multiple agencies fighting over jurisdiction." "Let them fight," Sarah said. "We've got enough evidence to bury him in any court." They watched as the agents led Briggs away. The former commander walked with his head high, but his defeat was evident in every step. Outside, camera flashes burst like lightning through the windows. Marcus leaned against a wall, suddenly feeling every year of his age. "Any word on Tyrese?" "Stable," Z reported quietly. "Doctors say he'll make it. Already asking when he can come home." A small smile crossed Marcus's face. "Stubborn as always." More agents entered the building, photographing evidence and documenting the scene. Marcus's team stayed close, forming a protective circle around their exhausted brother. "The farm," Marcus started, thinking of his destroyed home. "Is just land," Sarah finished firmly. "We'll rebuild it. Together." Bobby nodded. "Already got contractors lined up. Communities rallying, too. Amazing what people will do when the truth comes out." Through the main doors, they could see Briggs being led to a waiting vehicle. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras recorded every moment of his public disgrace. The man who had hidden in shadows for so long was finally exposed in the harsh light of justice. "You did it, Marcus," Sarah said softly. "You brought him in alive. Proved you're still the better man." Marcus watched as the vehicle carrying Briggs disappeared into the night, followed by a convoy of law enforcement. "We did it. All of us." The team stood together in the empty training compound, each lost in their own thoughts. The building that had once forged their brotherhood had now witnessed its ultimate test. They had faced their past, confronted betrayal, and emerged stronger. Local police began securing the scene with yellow tape. Evidence technicians carefully documented the signs of combat, photographing blood spots and collecting samples. The night would be long, full of statements and official reports, but the hard part was over. "Should we say something profound?" Bobby asked, breaking the heavy silence. "Seems like we should mark the moment somehow." Marcus straightened up, wincing slightly. "Nothing to say. Let's go home." Marcus sat on the edge of the motel bed, his body still sore from the fight with Briggs. The cheap TV mounted on the wall played yet another news report about the scandal. Sarah occupied the room's only chair, while Bobby and Z leaned against the wall, all of them watching intently. Former Navy SEAL Commander Alan Briggs has been indicted on multiple federal charges, the reporter announced. Sources say his operation extended across 3 states, manipulating hate groups and corrupting local law enforcement. Bobby clicked his tongue. They're still uncovering more. My data dump is keeping investigators busy. Good, Sarah said firmly. Let them follow every thread. The news showed footage of Sheriff Dade being led from the police station in handcuffs, his face twisted with shame. Several of his deputies had already turned state's evidence, revealing years of covered-up crimes and destroyed evidence. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Tyrese was awake and asking for visitors. He stood carefully, his muscles protesting. Need company? Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. I got this one, Marcus replied. Stay here, keep tracking the fallout. The hospital was only 10 minutes from their temporary base at the Riverside Motel. Marcus found Tyrese propped up in bed, looking better than he had 3 days ago. The bruises were fading to yellow, and some of the smaller cuts had already scabbed over. About time you showed up, Tyrese grinned weakly. Been watching the news. Looks like we started quite a storm. Marcus pulled up a chair. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, then backed over, then hit again. Tyrese adjusted his position slightly. Doc says I'll make a full recovery, but... He paused, looking serious. I've been thinking, brother. Maybe it's time to really retire. No more operations, no more battles. You sure about that? Marcus asked, though he already knew this was coming. Yeah, got enough scars to last a lifetime. Tyrese's expression softened. Besides, somebody's got to help your stubborn ass rebuild that farm. Can't trust you to do it alone. Marcus felt a weight lift from his chest. The idea of Tyrese finding peace, staying safe, felt right. Could use the help, he admitted. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus turned to see Reverend Williams, the leader of the largest black church in town, standing in the doorway. Behind him were James Chen, who owned the local hardware store, and Maria Rodriguez from the Hispanic Community Center. Mr. Owens, Reverend Williams said solemnly, may we come in? Marcus nodded, curious. The 3 community leaders entered, their faces showing a mix of shame and determination. We've come to apologize, Reverend Williams began. For years, we saw the signs. The harassment, the threats, the accidents that never got investigated. We stayed quiet, told ourselves it wasn't our problem. James Chen stepped forward. We were wrong. What happened to your farm? We should have spoken up long ago. Should have stood together. But we're here now, Maria added firmly. The community is organizing. We've started a rebuild fund. Materials, labor, equipment. Whatever you need. Marcus studied their faces, seeing genuine remorse and determination. This isn't just about my farm, he said carefully. No, Reverend Williams agreed. It's about changing things, really changing them. Sheriff Dade's replacement is already working with federal investigators. The county commission is establishing an oversight committee. And we want you involved, Maria said. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Tyrese chuckled from his bed. They're right, you know. Can't hide out on that farm forever. Marcus stood slowly, looking at each of them in turn. I appreciate the offer. All of it. But rebuilding isn't just about buildings and fences. We know, James said quietly. That's why we're here. Real change takes everyone working together. The contractors are ready whenever you are, Maria added. My brother's company will handle the heavy equipment. James has already donated materials. And my congregation, Reverend Williams smiled, makes excellent work crews, not to mention the best food for hungry volunteers. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not just hope, but a sense of real possibility. The isolation he'd lived with for so long was cracking, revealing a community ready to stand with him. "All right," he said finally. "Let's do this right. Build something that lasts." "Together." Reverend Williams extended his hand. Marcus took it firmly. "Together." From his hospital bed, Tyrese watched with satisfaction. "Now that's what justice looks like," he said softly. "Not just taking down the bad guys, but building something better." The room filled with discussion of plans and schedules, of materials needed, and volunteers to be coordinated. Through the window, Marcus could see the Georgia sun shining bright and clear. The land that Briggs had tried to poison with hatred would become something new. Not just a farm, but a symbol of what unity could achieve. "First priority," James was saying, "is getting your house rebuilt before the rainy season." "No," Marcus corrected gently. "First priority is making sure everyone knows they're welcome to be part of this. Every color, every background. That's how we really win." The others nodded in agreement, understanding that this moment was about more than construction plans. It was about building bridges, healing wounds, and creating the kind of community that would stand strong against any future threats. The morning sun painted long shadows across Marcus's rebuilt farm. 6 weeks of hard work had transformed the scorched earth into something new, something hopeful. Fresh wooden fences lined newly plowed fields, and the frame of a new barn stood tall against the Georgia sky. Marcus knelt in the rich soil, his hands deep in the earth as he prepared to plant the first row of corn. Beside him, Therese worked carefully, still moving a bit stiffly but determined to help. Sarah, Bobby, and Ezekiel spread out along the row, each with their own section to plant. Around them, dozens of community members worked in groups, some planting, others carrying supplies, or setting up tables for the afternoon gathering. James Chen directed a team installing irrigation pipes, while Maria Rodriguez's crew painted the last touches on the new storage shed. Reverend Williams moved between groups, offering encouragement and cold water. "Never thought I'd see the day," Tyrese said quietly, patting soil around a seedling. "All these people coming together like this." Marcus nodded, looking at the diverse crowd working his land. Change comes when people decide to make it happen. Sarah paused her work, wiping sweat from her forehead. "The foundation paperwork came through yesterday. The Red Clay Initiative is officially registered." "Good timing," Bobby added, precision placing his seeds with almost mathematical accuracy. "I've already got 3 veteran farming groups asking how they can get involved." Ezekiel worked silently nearby, but his usual tension had eased. The peaceful work of planting seemed to soothe something in all of them. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly neighbor who'd brought lunch for the volunteers every day since the rebuild began, called out from the new porch, "Food's ready for anyone who's hungry." The workers began gathering under the shade trees where tables had been set up. Marcus stood, brushing dirt from his knees, taking in the scene. Children played between the tables, while adults from every background in the community shared food and conversation. "Time to make the announcement?" Sarah asked, standing beside him. Marcus nodded. "Might as well do it while everyone's here." Reverend Williams noticed Marcus moving toward the center of the gathering and gently called for attention. The crowd quieted, faces turning expectantly toward Marcus. "First," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly across the yard, "I want to thank everyone who helped rebuild this farm. But what we've built here is more than buildings and fences." He gestured to the people gathered around him. "Look around. This is what community looks like. This is what strength looks like. And this is just the beginning." Marcus motioned to his team to join him. "Today, we're announcing the creation of the Red Clay Initiative. It's a foundation dedicated to supporting veterans and minority farmers across the country. We'll provide resources, training, and support to those who want to work the land but face barriers because of who they are or where they come from. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Marcus continued. What happened here? The hatred, the violence. It wasn't just about me. It was about trying to keep things divided, keep people afraid. But look what happened instead. He pointed to the new barn. Every beam in that barn was raised by different hands working together. Every fence post was set by neighbors helping neighbors. That's the real power. Not hatred, not violence, but unity. James Chen stepped forward. The hardware store is committed to supporting the initiative. We'll provide materials at cost for any project you undertake. And my construction company will handle heavy equipment needs, Maria added firmly. The church will coordinate volunteers, Reverend Williams declared. Whatever's needed, whenever it's needed. Marcus felt the momentum building as more people spoke up, offering support, resources, and ideas. This was more than he'd imagined possible weeks ago, standing in the ashes of his old life. The initiative's first project, Marcus announced, will be helping Thomas Washington restore his family farm over in Miller County. He's a Vietnam vet who's been fighting for closure. We start next week. Heads nodded throughout the crowd. They understood now. This wasn't just about one farm or one community. This was about changing the landscape, literally and figuratively. The gathering evolved into an impromptu planning session, with people forming groups to discuss logistics, resources, and schedules. Marcus stepped back, watching as his neighbors took ownership of the initiative's mission, making it their own. Tyrese appeared at his side, grinning. Look at you, starting a movement. We started a movement, Marcus corrected. All of us. Sarah joined them, followed by Bobby and Ezekiel. They stood together, watching the energy and enthusiasm spread through the crowd. It's more than justice, Sarah observed. It's transformation. From ashes to action, Bobby added, with his characteristic dry smile. The afternoon sun cast golden light across the newly planted fields as Marcus and his closest friends moved to the edge of the property. They stood together, looking over the rebuilt farm, the new buildings, the freshly turned earth, and, most importantly, the people working together to create something meaningful. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction settle in his chest. The land that had once been scarred by hatred now promised new growth, new possibilities, and new connections that would reach far beyond these acres. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.